Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Document and Contract Designer. In this training, I'm going to show you how to create unlimited documents and contracts. You're going to be able to create, customize, and send those filled out documents and contracts to anybody or email them or create PDFs. It's going to be an incredible training. I can't wait. Let's get started. All right, thanks so much. In this training, I've got a great training for you this week. We're going to show you so much. You're going to be able to create unlimited documents, unlimited types of contracts. You're going to put in all types of different fields, whether we are adding a new item in a specific text blocks or data item, or even a global variable such as maybe a date or time. We're going to be able to add all of that in, even with any type of field, any type of variable. We're going to be able to select on it. We'll be able to customize that. And I'm going to show you how you can automatically print those documents, email them as PDF, and we're going to send them to all or some or many of your customers or any type of data. Now, in the past, we have filled out PDF forms. We have also customized Word documents, but I wanted to create something different this week. And this week, we're going to be able to create our own contracts, our own documents, all within Excel. And we're going to be able to create unlimited. If we want to add new templates, we can add brand new templates. We get a blank canvas. We can create any type of text block here. Just add a name and we can create it. It's going to add that item directly to our document. We're going to be able to customize that, right? We're going to be able to save our template so we can create any type of word. We're going to be able to save that information. So if I want to go ahead and make this bold, and we can even change the font, increase the font, and we can add a name to this test template. It's going to be able to add our own templates, our own documents, just like this. Let's go ahead and create that, and we can set a specific data table. We just have customers, but you can add your own data tables, and we can even have a template type. Let's just say customer. And so once we do that, we just save or update that template. It's going to automatically save. And then we're going to be able to add, basically simply select it, it's going to come out. So notice that we have now 3 templates, and we can add pictures. We can have lease agreements. So you can make your own templates. We can add fields to those templates. So if we have a title like this, for example, we can go ahead and add a field. Let's say we want a specific customer field. We just click new item, and now we say, okay, maybe we want a data item. What do we want to show here? Well, maybe I want to show the, let's say, customer name. So we can show the customer name. We just type in customer name right here. And then it shows us our customer name. We just click add the item. It's going to add that customer name automatically here. Just like that. That's a sample customer. So we can put that customer name in anywhere. We can add lots of data. We can also add a picture if I want to. You can just select new item, click the picture, adding a picture here. Select any browse for any type of picture that we want, just like this here. And we can pretty much add any type of picture we want. Let's say we want to add this. We can add a picture here. It's really a great training. So once we have that, we can add the picture to the document. Just click add. Let's give it a name here, test picture here. And then click add the picture. It's going to add that picture here. Then we can shrink it down. Once we add that picture to our document here, it's going to save exactly in the same position. We just click save and update that. Now what we do is we select a different template, go back to the test template, and our picture is in the exact same spot, in the exact same size as we had before. So we can create tons of templates, tons of documents, and I'm going to show you exactly how we can do that. A few things just before we get started. I want to make sure that you have subscribed to our channel. That is really important because that helps you get these brand new and free trainings each and every week, each and every Tuesday. I'm always going to have a free template for you for download. All you need to do is click the links down below. That's for email or Facebook, and I'll make sure you get to that. Don't forget to click the notifications icon bell. That'll get you alerted for these trainings. If you do like these trainings, and I love bringing them to help you out, I'm going to show you how to create applications on your own for passive income. And that means taking Excel applications, creating amazing, secure, protected, and licensed applications, and how to send them to your customers for free and actually then get paid for it using recurring income once they get license number, once they purchase your applications. I'm going to show you that entire process because I'm doing that in the mentorship program. In that specific program, I'm going to be creating an entire accounting application. We're going through it. That's going to include invoicing, inventory, customer information, dashboards, sharing and sync, all the features that you want to know how to create, license your own Excel applications for passive income. That's what I'm doing in the mentorship program. Hundreds of students are having an amazing time in that program right now. You can join anytime. I want to show you how to take your Excel skills and create financial freedom with that. So if you like that, myexcelmentor.com, that'll get you there. All the details. I'll include the links down below. All right, let's get started. I've got so much to show you in this particular training. It's a comprehensive training. Not only are you going to be able to learn how to create these kinds of documents with these kinds of fields, you are also going to learn how to work with shapes. You're going to learn special formulas. You're going to create buttons. We're going to show you every step. Of course, I often like to create these from scratch, but when we have these kinds of comprehensive trainings, this will turn out to be a 6-hour training if I do it from scratch. So in something like this, where it includes a lot of different aspects and a lot of different organization, I want to make sure that I give you every detail. I move slowly through it. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to show you everything I did, every macro, every line of code, every formula, so you can not only create these on your own, not only get the Excel skills, but to be able to create your own applications with your own flavor. And also, something like this is great to include as part of a larger application where customers can create their own contracts, fill them out automatically. So for example, if I take this contract, I can send it to my own customer. I can select a specific lease agreement. I want to send it to a single customer. I want to print that document. I just need to print it out, and it's going to automatically be filled out automatically, and it's going to be printed to my Snagit editor, and there it is right there. There's the filled out. You can see it's already been filled out with the customer information. We can do the same thing with email. If I want to email this particular, it's going to automatically attach it as an email. Here it is right here. That's the lease agreement, and it's automatically filled out with the customers. Now we can also send that to multiple customers. I'll go ahead and open this up, and we see it's already been filled out inside the PDF. So how are we going to do that? How do we do that? We can also send it to multiple customers, all customers, or you can send it to customers by a single type. Now keep in mind, this is going to be from multiple databases. Here's what I have. I've got a customer database, just some customer information. I've got template items. These are items specifically for the template. Notice we have 3 different templates. So we have a template ID number 1, number 2, and number 3, the one that we just created. That's the test that we just created. That's template number 3. So all of this, and we're going to store all of the information. What's really cool about this particular template is any changes you make get saved. Now I really like that. It's really important. Let's say I want to increase this font. So let's drop this down and increase this font a little bit. I want to make it larger. All I need to do is click save and update. That information is saved. Now let's clear that out. Go to, let's say, the non-disclosure agreement. Notice we're back in a different agreement. Go back into the lease agreement and notice that font's been saved. If I want to bring it back down again to something smaller, again, save the template, bring it back into the non-disclosure, back in here, see how fast it is, and notice that everything's been saved. The position, if I want to bring it down and I want to increase the font a little bit back to where it is, I can do that, just save and update the template. So I'm going to show you how to do all of that. Delete template, that's something I'm going to leave for you. I've left this macro open because I want to see what you can do with this. I want to see what you can do it. This is your challenge. I've gotten you to add new save. I'm going to keep delete. There's no macro assigned to this because I want to see you do that. Part of this training is not just me giving you templates that you can use, but challenging you to create and challenging you to add your own flavor and also complete these when they're, there's always a lot to do. I only create these in, let's say, 1 to 3 days. So I want to make sure that there's things left for you to work on and challenge yourself to increase your Excel skills, not just to give you free software, but to increase your skills so that you can create these and, of course, get that financial freedom using your Excel skills. So delete template is something that I'm leaving open. Don't ask me for that because I know you can do that. I have confidence in you. If you follow my videos, you will be able to assign a macro to this and delete that template. It's very simple. Okay, so let's go on. How do we do that? There's a lot of features in here, so we're going to go right. If I select on a specific item in the document, it's going to show me that item. If I select on this top, it's going to select that specific top section. And it's going to make those changes, the text in here. So if I want to change this to something else, I can do that. I can add different text. Let's say if I want to have a text block here, notice there's a text block, but if I want to change that or change the name of it, I can do that as well. What if I want to add a new field? I can just click new. Let's say I want to add a date field. I want to click, let's just say I want to add a specific date field. So I want to add a global variable, and I just want us to call it current date, and I can do that. Now we can add data variables. What if I want to add the current current date, I can add that too, and just click add item. It's going to automatically add that item here. Maybe we want to do something like month or change it out. So maybe we want to say this day. I want to know what day it is. We can just click the update item and it's going to update to 13. That's the current day. But what if I want to know the weekday? And also if we select on a specific item, we can then change it. This weekday is going to do just that. It's currently Sunday, the day of the recording. So I can show that. So there's lots of global variables. And what are those global variables and where do they come from? Well, they come from a small table right here. You can add anything you want here. And you can add any value you want here and format them accordingly. So we have global, these are constants, these stay the same. Of course, these are based on a formula. So the current date would be today. The current date and time would be now. The current date is also today, but it's formatted as a day. So how do we do that? Notice these two are the same, but this one's showing 13, this one's showing 12, 13. How do we do that? Well, it's just simply with a custom format. So if we go in more number formats and we take a look at this, we see that this is the type D. That is the format that we have assigned to that. Same thing. This would have the format of DDD, 4 Ds on this. That will give us the custom format on that, the dates. If we have this for December, we want a full month. Again, we use the month M, and then we use 4 months. If we wanted to create a shorter, we would just do M. That'll give us something like December, but adding additional M will give us the full range. And then, of course, the year would be forward Y. So you can figure that out. So all I did was add that. So now what I want to do is I want to basically add this, select on this, and I can change it to anything I want. I can create the year, and what it's going to do is just click update item. It's going to update that automatically. Very cool. All right, so we can also delete any item. Just simply selecting on it is going to delete it, and that will clear it out. So just like that, we can delete an item. Very cool, and it automatically refreshes and clears out the list. So that's great. So we want to do that. We want to actually update that. So I want to put in really 4 different types of items here. I want to put in pictures. So let's say I want to put in a logo on here. I click new item, and then I click in, let's just say picture, and then we can add a picture just as I showed you before. We can also click on data item, and this is a specific database based on our customer, right? So we have data table based on customers. When you add additional tables, you can create any kind of table you want here. Then what you want to do is you can assign this template to a specific data table. So if you have items or inventory items or customers or vendors or invoices or whatever you want, you just add this to the list here. And then we have template lease. Then we have lease agreement. So then you just give it a specific name. You can add any type you want. That's just informational. And then you just click the save or update or add. So it's really comprehensive. And the ability to do this is going to be fantastic. So let's go through an overview, and then we're going to get into the VBA exactly how we did that. So as far as the overview, basically I have a very, very simple print and send documents. All we have here is a selected template. We're going to send to, who do we want to send it to, whether it's all customers, right? We're all customers here, or we want to send by customer type, or again, by a single customer. If it's a single customer, we're going to select from a single customer here, a customer list. If we have a select by customer type, we have a drop down list. We're using conditional formatting for this to show and hide fields accordingly. Or if we want to send to all customers, of course, there's nothing. So how do we do that? Well, we got conditional formatting here. So let's take a look inside the conditional formatting, manage rules, and we see basically some few rules here. We have based on G6 through H6, of course, that is going to be the customer type, send type or prospect here. Edit, if we edit that rule, we see that if H4 does not equal customer type, then we want to give it a specific format. I want to give it a font color of this light blue, which is the same as the background. I want to clear all the borders out, which means clear or none. Actually, when we click none, it's going to see no borders around here. And I want to give it a specific fill color. That fill color is the same as a background. Okay, so that's how we do that. That's how we hide it. What if we want to use the single customer? If it's not single customer, if the H4 does not equal single customer, then what I want to do is I want to hide D and E. So we're going to focus on that. Same thing. What we're doing is giving the fill of the color, the same color, no borders, and the font the same color. So that's going to hide that specific D through E right here. Okay, so that's how we get it hidden. So if we want to click on single customer does equal, then we do want it to show up. This is a drop-down list. I've got a few named ranges, so we can take a look at some of the named ranges that we have here. It's going to help us moving forward. So we're going to ignore the criteria. Those are created based on advanced filters. I'm actually using a table this time, and it's going to be the customer table. These are going to focus on a table. This is our actual table that we're using here in the customer. So I've created a table. that's going to help us with the project itself. So we have the table here. All right, moving on. What else do we have in the named ranges back inside the name manager? We have the customer name. This is a specific using customer name. That's for customer names. We actually have our customer headers, which is going to be focused on our customer headers. That's going to be important because we need to select when we want a data validation. If we want to show a customer email or something, we need to do that. I've got a global name. Remember, we focused on our global. These are the names of global. We're using offset. That means as this grows, it grows itself. We're going to use offset M7. I'm using M7. Why am I using M7? Because in case there's no data, I want to include the headers. But notice I'm using one row down. That means that we don't want to start with that header row. And we're going to count everything from 7 to 20, but I'm going to subtract 1 because I'm including the header, but subtracting it, because this way when there's no data, it will not create an error. That's why we use offset. I also have one for global values. So these are the values based on this. An item ID, if we take a look at item ID, I've got the items row. Those are the rows of the items, and I'll show you that a little bit later. Just keep them in mind. So these are all the template block items. So when we create a template, then we have all the template IDs. So 1 would be the first template, 2 would be the second, 3 would be the third template. Then we have the row. These are rows. I should really call this row. So I'll change that. It should be item row, not item ID. Okay, print area. We need to set a print area. That's going to be a dynamic print area, and I've got a really cool trick to show you with that. How do we create a dynamic print area when they're all shapes? Right? How do we do that? I'm going to show you exactly how that. Template ID is going to be based on the individual templates. We have 3 templates. We have a template name, a table that it's associated with, and the type here. And then we also have the template name here, so the name associated with those templates. So that's for the named ranges. So what I was mentioning just before, look, these are only shapes, right? These are only shapes. So how do I know where the last shape exists? How do I know what row to set the print ID? Normally, when we have a dynamic print range, we use the last row. But when they're all shapes, how do we know to get that last row? And I'm going to show you that trick. It's a really cool trick to show you the last row based on some shapes. So that'll be coming up very soon. I'm going to show you that as well, walking you through that. So continuing on with this, so this is relative. We'll just set an email subject and email message. This training, we're not going to focus too much on this because we have in other trainings. I want a template ID. I want to know what ID is assigned to this template, so we're just going to simply use a formula for that, and that formula is going to be the index based on that template ID. We're matching the template name. It's really just a simple index match formula. I'm going to do the same thing for customer. I want to know the customer using a match. I want to know what row this customer is on. So in this case, I want to know that Arid is on number 4. We have different customers. This is just a data validation based on the customer. This will tell us the customer row. That's important because I need to get the data from this customer. So if I change this, right, I want to make sure that when we print the document, it is that customer information that gets in there. And I want to know basically this is going to be true or false based on whether we're going to display those emails or whether we're going to send them without displaying. So that's it for this screen. Relatively simple. We're going to focus on the designers. So just briefly, here's the list of templates. As we create is an unlimited number of templates here. They're going to get saved. The main information that's saved in the template: name, table, and type. Same thing here: name, table, and type. That's where it comes from. We have the template items. Now for each specific item, what do I mean by items? This is an item. This is an item. This is an item. This is an item. Now there are different types. As I select it, really cool. So if I want to select this and I want to change this to lease period shall be for 2 years, I could just change this for 2 years. And all I need to do is just click then update the item. It's going to automatically change in here. So notice it's been changed. Saving the template is going to save or update. It's going to ensure that that template gets automatically saved. And so it's really great. So what we need to do is we want to make sure that these individual items, all the details get saved. I need to save everything about this item. I need to save the font, the size, the position. If I want to move this position over, right? If I don't save that, right? And I go back to a different agreement and I go back, of course, it's not going to be saved, right? So what I need to do is I'm going to make sure that that position gets saved exactly where it should be. So when I click save, it's going to save that position. Now when I leave that and come back to that, I want that position saved exactly where I saved it. So that's really important. Also the size, the position, the font, everything's going to get saved. That way I can easily recreate these. And notice that, as I choose a different customer, it's going to change automatically for when I have data valid. Notice these are data items. So this is the customer. This is the customer address. So we can choose data items. Now, data items are going to be based on the date value. So remember, these are all here. These are all based on the specific customer information, customer ID, the name, the office. All right, and let's say we want to add a phone number. All we need to do is click new item, click on our data item here, and just put in a number here, phone number. And then of course, get in the data value. All we need to do is select, let's say, office number and click add item. That's going to add it automatically wherever we want. Then what we need to do is just drag it over here, resize it accordingly wherever we want. We can also then change it here, and then that's it. And just click save and update. That's going to automatically save it. So now when I come back into that, I go out of it and come back into that phone number, that new data item is going to automatically be saved. And this is data, so it's going to change with every customer inside the form. All we need to do is then print it. So we've got a lot to show you. So that's basically the idea of the template. Let's get into some of the hidden stuff. We've got 3 particular columns that are going to be hidden, and we'll show you about that. We have the table row. Now this is going to be the row of the table. We need that. We have, I'll show you a little bit of this later. We have the template ID. That's going to be this will change. So when I change this template, we're going to change that. That's going to change automatically based on whatever is template. We also have a selected template ID. So this template ID is going to be put in by VBA. So when they change the name, I have a formula here. Formula is going to be based on this name right here, selected template. So what I have here is I want to index the template ID, indexing the template ID, and I want to get that template ID based on the match formula. I'm going to match the template name based on whatever's in E3. So what this is going to do is going to get us the template ID. As soon as I change this template, template ID 1, template ID 2, template ID 3. So it's going to change it based on that. And so all I want to do in that case is take whatever is in here and place it here. And then I'm going to load that template based on the ID. So we also have the template row. What row is it on? Right? So notice template number 1 is on 3, right? Template number 1 is on row 3. That way I know what information to load. I need to load the template name, the table, and type. Notice if you paid attention to my trainings before, we're not using data mapping. There's only 3 fields, so no need for data mapping on something like this. If you follow my trainings, when we have large tables, we always use data mapping, but in this case, it's only 3 columns, so it's really not necessary in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load that information here, here, and here. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Then what I want to do is if, for example, it's template ID, I want to run an advanced filter. All the items, all of these items, these are all items, all these items associated with that template, I need to load in here. Not only need to load in here, I need to load the values, the position, the text, the font, everything. I need to load exactly how I left it before. However, when it was saved, I need to do that. So how do I do that? And we can also update the format. Notice this date is formatted differently. All we need to do is just change the date, format here, and that format's going to stick with it. So if I want to update that format to a date format, here I just change it to a short date. It's going to automatically change. So we can update the dates accordingly too, and it's always going to be formatted. It's going to take on that format. So a lot to show you in that. All right, so how do we do it? Let's go ahead and save this. How do we do that? How do we get this information in here? So again, all we need to do is have this list of template items. Just like if we were creating an invoice and we have invoice items, it's the same idea. If in the past we have an invoice, main invoice, and then we have invoice items. This is the same thing. We have a larger template or something like that. We have a template. All we need is that unique ID. All we need is that unique ID, the template ID, so that we know which items go with which template. So then I'm just going to run an advanced filter so that I want to extract only those items for template number 1. And we can do that with an advanced filter. So in here, in this case, template ID equals 1. So all I need to do is just create a link all the way to the designer B2. Designer B2, of course, that is the cell that's going to hold our template ID. So when I run an advanced filter and I want to extract only those items from that template, I can do that right from here using this. And what that's going to do is going to extract only the items in our results here, only those items that are from that specific template. And then I can bring in the information. I want to know what table row, this is the row of the original row of the data. That's this row right here, table row. I'm bringing it here in the beginning. Of course, we can sort it in any order. This is the database row. Notice row 3, row 4, row 5. I want to keep that. Why do I want that? Why is that important that I save that? Because when I go back into the designer and I make some kind of a change to a name, I need to know what row to save those names on. Notice the database row 3, 4, 5. These are the same rows that we have here in the template. The same rows, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that way I know exactly what row to save those changes. So for example, let's say in address, right? The value of this is customer address. So when I go back into the designer and I click on address and I want to change the name, and let's just say I want to change it to customer address, and I update that item and then save, and I want to save that, update that template, I need to know that that must be saved in the specific row. So when I go into the address here, we save that, it's right here in customer. This is the name. That name gets updated, customer address right here. We need to know what row that was in row 6 of the data. So that's really, really important. So we see here the row 6, customer address. So we have to have that 6 because we need to know what row. So that's really important. What else do we have in the template items? We're going to have the item row, right? This is the row of the item. I need to know what row. When I bring this information back into all of this information in the designer, I need to know that it's row 9, row 10, row 11, or whatever. I need to know what row to place it in because I want to do the exact same row when we added the designer. We just added the current date on 12. So I need to know, on row 18, I need to know the database 12. I need to know what row to bring it back on. So I need to make sure that the current date comes in back on row 18 of the designer. So that's why we must save 18. So when I save this, if we notice here, right here, template number 1, this current date must be, we need to know that the item row 18 here is the same as 18 right here. Okay, so we need to save current date must come back onto row 18. So I need to know that. If it's a table column, let's say it's a specific data. Let's say it's a signature name, right? I want to know that signature. Let's say down here I have the signature name here. I want to know what column this is. What do I mean by column? This is the specific name. Column is that inside our database. Here, name is on column 2, office is on column 3, mobile on column 4. So we need to also know what column it is. So when we bring in the data, I know what column, name, office. So we need that. I also want to save that. That's going to have to be saved inside the templates. So only for those items that are associated with data, we need to know what column. Name is on column 2, address is on column. So this is the database column. We need to know what saved there. So we have the item name, right? That's the name we associated with. The type, is it a data item? Is it a text block? Text block would be something like this. This is the text block. We can add that information. We can update that any which way. All we need to do is select on that. We can update the text block. This is a text block item. So we also have here the signature, right? The value. What is the value of it? Notice it's very, very long. This is the entire value because I need to bring that in. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's not. So we can bring that in. So we have that. We understand that the template ID, we understand the item row, right? We understand the item name, the name we've assigned, the type, the value, which is the value. We also understand the data column. Then what I want to do is I want to save the left position. Now it's not just any left position on a sheet, it's left position based on some other cell. The left position, basically what I want to do, notice that our position here, everything's going to start on what we're looking at. Let's just say cell, let's go into a specific cell here. It's going to be I5. So basically everything's on I5. That's our starting point, wherever I5 is. So what I want to know, since I know I5 is our starting cell, that's the top left corner of our document, I want to know how far this is from I5 on the top and on the left. I want to know how far this is from I5. So I5 is going to use our measurement. That way, if I increase this, if I want to, it's going to also increase when I load it, right? So it's not going to be based on the sheet. It's going to be based on this cell here, which is exactly what I want. So I want to save that information, and I want to save it inside here. I want to save the left position based on it. So basically, this particular logo is 13.5 pixels to the right of I5. So if I move it over, so let's say I move it right over here. Let's go back into the designer here. Let's move this right over here, right up on the top, right? Let's just say right here up in the top, and I save or update that, I want to know that left position changed. So when I go back into the template items, now we see that it's only 0.5 left position, and it's only top position is 1.25 from the top. If it was 0 and 0, it would be exactly on it. So if I change this value to 0 and 0, then it's going to be exactly on the top, right? So if I reload that just by double clicking here, reloading it, it's going to be positioned a little bit higher, a little bit to the left of that, just like that. So now it's right on it. Okay, so we see how we do that, and if we move it across over and then just save it, those changes. So I need to understand the left position based on I5, and everything is based on that one cell. So it's distance from either the top distance from I5 or the left distance of I5. That's going to help us position and keep those positions. So we have both the left and the top positions. Notice how on our logo it changed. We have the height of whatever it is, whether it's a picture or a text box, and the width of that. I want to know the font size. Notice that our non-disclosure font size is 16. Our picture doesn't have any font size, but everything else is 11 in this. So we want to keep track of that font size. So if it increases, when I build it back up, it is going to also increase. I want to know the font type. If I change a specific font type, I want to know that so that the other font types can be. I want to know if it's bold, italicized, underline, aligned horizontally, left, right, vertical align, and the table row. Vertical align, what is that? Well, that's this here. Not something we use too much, but if we're vertically aligning here, I want to know that it's been top vertical aligned or the middle or anything like that. So that's going to help us. So when we change that and click Save Update, that's going to change as well on the top vertical. So when we go back into the template items, we see that now the vertical line is 1 here. So 1. They give different values, 1 or 3 in the middle. But that's fine because all I need to do is just save whatever Excel saves and bring it back. So we're going to save all that information. It's really cool. That's going to allow us to build these templates. If you use this, you can build any number type of documents and fill that in just by doing this. So we want to keep track of all of that. All right, so let's get into the VBA. We've covered the overview. Now the VBA is a lot, but we're going to go step by step through it. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that so you get to create that. So the first thing what I want to do is just start with simple. We'll start with this selection change. So on this specific selection change, I want to do a few things. I want to select whatever items associated with that. I want to then load in the details of that. I want to know what details. And there's two ways we can load it. If we select on a specific item, I want that item selected here. Or if I select on an item here, I want it to load up. So basically we can load the items from the document here. Notice the signature has it here. That's the signature down here. And we can do that. We can make changes as we want. And then all we need to do is update them. And because we do have a lot of code to go over, I'll be going over a little bit quick. But of course, you're welcome to watch this as many times as you want or slow down the video as you like. Into the developers, if you click on the developers, Visual Basic, Alt F11 will get you there. Now we have some macros on the designer, nothing on the create and send. So the designer, we're going to focus on selection change, just a little bit of code on this selection change. So what do I want to do? When I make a selection from D9 through E20, I want something to happen. D9 through E20, but I only want it to happen if there's a value in D. If there's nothing in D, I don't want anything to happen. So when I want that, I want to show this little button here, this little delete icon here. We call that delete item button. So I want that to show up. I want to show up in column F, but I want to move it over a little bit over to the left of column F. So I want to do that. Then what I want to do is I want to load the information. I want to put the item type in here, the item name here, and then whatever value is associated. Now, of course, only texts have data items, don't have values because their values are dynamic. It's based on the desk. And of course, pictures don't have as well. Pictures, we can just browse for it if we want. So we want to load in the items and information. That's a macro. So the first thing we're going to do is if D, we want to make sure that D is not empty. If that's, then we can move on. I want to take in whatever's in B7, I want to put the target row inside B7. So that's going to help with conditional formatting. Notice when we highlight over here, it's kind of annoying. So what I want to do is, like if you want to highlight multiple cells and you can't do it, notice it's just not letting us because of the macro. So what we can do is we can add something to our code. I'll show you how to do that. So you can do like this. If target.countLarge is greater than, let's just say 3 or 2, whatever, we want more than any merge cell, then exit sub. So now when we write that, now when I select more than one cell, it's going to let us select it. So that's what I really want to happen. So now we can do that. So that's easy. Let's continue on. So B7 is going to take on our target row. That's going to help us with our conditional formatting. If we slide over here, B7, we're going to see is 10, and that's what our conditional formatting is. So if we go into the highlight any cells here, go into home, conditional formatting, manage the rows, we see that B7 is going to equal to row. We also have two other conditional formattings, and these are just based on alternate rows. So based on two conditions, D9, meaning that's a starting row because there's no $sign before the 9, it's not absolute, does not equal blank, and the mod row, meaning odd rows, mod of row 2 equals 1. As an odd row, I want to color those a little bit light blue. Now the other one's mod row equals 0. This is going to be for even rows, also D9, and this one I'm going to give it a color white. That way we're going to get this alternating color as we grow. So that's a really great thing. So that's the three conditional formattings that we take in that area. So what else do I want to do? I want to run the macro. We're going to go over this first, item load, and then I want to show this delete item. That's that little icon. I'm going to show it in column F, but I'm going to move it to the left, -17. If I'm going to move it to the right, it would be positive. Set the top mark based on F and then display it. If for some reason we select anything else other than this, or we select something that doesn't have a value, then I want to basically hide that delete item. So that's going to hide that shape if we do any other type of selection. So that way if I select here, or here, or here, it's going to hidden, but otherwise if its values are show up, D contains a value, and we've selected within the range, we want this X to show up. Okay, so what that's going to do is also launch the macro to load the item. So let's look in that macro. That's going to load this item. It's going to load those details in here. So let's take a look at that. Inside some of the modules, we have item macros, and we also have something called item load. That's the one we're focusing on now. That's the one we want. Going to focus on sheet 2. We want to make sure B7 contains a value. B7, of course, is the value. We do need that row, right? If B7 doesn't have a row, there's nothing we can load up. So we want to make sure that we have that, although we always should. Assuming the B7 have value, we can then turn application screen updating to false. This is going to make things go a little bit quicker, but we certainly need to make sure it's turned on before. Notice that we have the exit sub. We don't put application screen updating here. We put it below the exit sub because we don't want to turn off application screen updating unless we've gotten below all the exit subs. Okay, we're going to set the item row as a variable, long variable, to B7. Then what I'm going to do in G7, I'm going to lower this a little bit so we can see both. Then what I'm going to do is in G7, we're going to put the item type. That's going in G7. In G8, we're going to put the item name. Of course, that's going to come from here and here, right? Both those items are going to be coming from D and E, columns D and E. E is going to be the item type, D is going to be the item name. If G7 does not equal text block, text block is, what is a text block? This is the text block. Well, if G7 is not equal text block, then what we don't need to do is let's go back into the code. If it's not equal, then G9 is going to take on C, the item value. Notice value is here, right? We're using a larger field for the value for text blocks. Otherwise, for something like picture or date item, we do want to have D9. Whatever's in C is going to take here. Otherwise, for larger ones, let's say for the text blocks, we want to put that in a larger field. That's going to go into F10. Okay, F10. So that's in our code. So if it's not, right, not text block, G9 is going to take on whatever's C. Otherwise, what do I want to appear in here? I want to appear in here whatever's the text information. So if we take a look at this, we see this is called item 14. Why is it called item 14? Because it's based on the 14th row. Every time we select a shape, it's based on the row we select. This will be the signature item is based on item 15. The picture is based on item 10, right? So the picture is called item 10. So every single item has a name and it's based on the row. So notice non-disclosure is called item number 9. It's based on row 9. So what I want to do is I want to take whatever text is in here, non-disclosure agreement, and I want to place it right in here in F10. I can also take it whatever's in C too. That will work as well. There's two ways we can get it, what's in C, or we can do it what is in the value. So I wanted to show you how we can take the text of the value and place it here. So that's just what we did right here. So we're going to take the text shapes item and item row, item 9, 10, 11, the text frame, the text range, and the text. So this is the text inside the shape, but I want to place that directly in F10. Next up, what I want to do is I want to hide the add item button. There's two items. Notice here I've got some buttons here. I've got 3 buttons here, but only two show up at the same time. I have this button. It's called update item button. I have this. It's called new update, and I have another one. So if I click new button, I want a button called add item here. Add the item here. This button here is called add item button. Okay, if I select on the specific, then I want to call it update button. This is called update. Let's click on here and here, update item button. So we're going to show a button called update item button, or if I click a new button, I want to show add item button. Two different buttons, but they both have the add or update. So it's going to be the same macro. So I want to show those buttons, but I know if I select on an existing one, it's going to be the update button that I want to show, and I want to hide the new one. So that's just what we did in here. Add item button, we're going to hide that add item button because it's not a new button, and I want to show the update button, showing it for existing items. And then of course I want to select the specific item, right? If I select on the logo, I want to select that item. If I select on the customer name, I want to select that item here. So how do we do that? We know the item, it's item 11 based on the word item and based on the row. So we can do that, just select. So shapes, item, and the item row dot select. Then application screen updating true. We want to make sure it's set to true. That is it. That's all we need to do to actually load that item in here. Perfect. But how do we get an add item? How do we add an item? Click on new. Let's go over some of the macros other associated with items. So inside this, let's go scroll up here. We have item select. I'll show you that in a minute. But item new or add item is going to be down right here. So let's go all the way down right here. Item new, what I want to do is I want to clear out the associated fields. So we're going to clear out B7, that's the selected item. Remember, when we select item, we want to clear out. I'll also make sure to hide this. Let's go ahead and hide this, delete item. We need to hide that button. When I select new item, we want to hide that X. So we'll add that in as well. Then what I want to do is I want to set the default to text block. I want to clear this out, and clear this out. So we're going to clear all the associated fields. We're going to set the text block, the default G7 to text block. We're going to hide let's call this hide. This should be hide. Hide the update button, right? It's not an update button, it's new. And we're going to show the add item, show, because that's for the new items. And I also want to hide one more thing. I want to hide that X. Sheet 2 dot shapes, and then this delete item button. I want to hide that because that's only for existing. Equals MSO false. So we're going to, again, hide the delete button. So now that we have that, we're going to show all that. So we're going to save that. So now, of course, when I select on new item, it's going to do all those things, hide that delete button. Then we can put in a new item, or we can change the item type. Okay, so that's great. So I wanted to show you that. So that's pretty much simple for new items. Then let's go ahead and with the add picture. Now this add picture, this icon, when I change this to picture, I want this icon to show up so we can add a picture. This macro has been changed so we can add a picture very easily to here. So how do we do that? On change of G7. So let's look back in the code. Then we're going to get into this. So the macro that runs that is basically we're just going to select a picture and we're going to take whatever that path and put it in G9. That path is going to go right here when we select a picture. So when I select a picture, that path is going to go right here into G9, just like that. So we don't need to save that, but let's take a look in G9. Let's take a look at the designer. When I make a change to G7, something's going to happen. When I make a change, again, worksheet change to G7, something's going to happen. The first thing what I want to do is I want to delete any validation in G9. I want to delete the validation here because we don't know what's going to go in here. Why might there be a validation? If I click data item, notice that there's going to be a validation based on the customers, based on this customer list. But I want to delete it because we don't know what it's going to be in here. If I click on global, that's going to be a different validation, right? So the first thing I want to do is delete the validation here. So we do that with here because we can't add any new validation without first deleting a previous validation. So that's going to delete it. Okay, next up, what I want to do is the target value. If the target value equals picture, then I want to show this visible. I want to show that shape. Otherwise, hide it. That's that little icon to show it, right? So as soon as I change it to picture, I want to show or hide that specific shape. This icon here, add picture button. I want to hide or show it based on the selection. So that's relatively straightforward. Next up, if the target value equals data item, if this is data item, then what do I want to do? I want to set the validation based on this. We have a customer headers, right? So let's take a look at this data validation. This data validation is based on customer headers. That's the named range I went over for you based on these customer headers. So how do we do that? Well, we could do that here. We know that if it's data item, we're going to G9, we're going to select any unselect shapes, select G9, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a validation. We're going to base it on E5. What's in E5? E5 is the data table, because if we have multiple data tables, we have multiple name range based on that. So it's going to be based on whatever's in E5 and the headers. In this case, customer headers. Great. What about if it's a global variable? If it's a global variable, then again, G9 select validation. This time we're going to have a validation called global name. That, of course, is the names here, right? So if I select global variable here and select the name here, let's say global variable here, let's say we want current date, I want the names in there. So if we go into the data validation here, global name, here you go, global name. All right, so that's going to give us these global names right here. That's the list that's concerning here. So that's where we're going to be able to change it. So let's continue on with the code. So that's it. That's all we need. And then, of course, G9, we're going to clear any contents. When we change it, I want to make sure that any contents are changed here so the user can select, so that when I make a change, automatically anything is cleared here. Okay, great. So that's it for G9. That's all we, as far as the changes on G7. So it's relatively simple how we do that. So, but what about when we adding an item? So now we understand new items. We understand how we make changes here and how the variables change, or how the validation changes here, and we clear everything out. But how do we save the item? If I want to do is, let's say I want to put in a, let's say data item here, and I want to put in, let's just call it, let's say we have some additional features here, email. I want to put in customer email, and I want to save it. I want to click add item. I want that information to be saved, and I want to put it right here, and then of course I just want to do that. So how do we do that? Well, there's a few ways to do it, and I'm going to show you one of the easiest ways to do it. The first thing what we always want to do is we want to start out with a sample shape, and I've got this shape here. This is what we're going to be basing it on. So if you want to create something like, create that sample shape exactly as you want and give it a specific name. Make sure that name is very different than this. Notice all of our names here start with item. This is called sample shape. So this we keep always. And what we want to do is duplicate this shape and then customize it and position it based on that, rename it, reposition it, and all that. So now we have the customer email. So we can put that customer email anywhere we want on our form. So how do we do that? How do we click the add item, which was add item? So let's take a look at that. So we're going to focus on that macro first. Let's go out of here and go back into the name, and that's going to be right here called item. Let's see right here, add or update. It is the same macro whether we update it or add it. So that's going to add that item. It's basically going to duplicate that sample and then place it in here. So first thing we need to do is make sure that we have the right fields. When we're adding an item, let's add and update are both the same macros. Same macros. So if I click on any individual sheet here and we click on the assign macro, we see that it's the add item update, item add or update macro. Same thing, if I click new item here, let's click on that, and we see that's the add item. Again, it's the same macro, item add. So same macro we can use for adding it or updating. We just need to make a few changes. So what are those changes? The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that G7 and G8 are not empty, right? If they're empty, these are really important, G7, G8, and we want to make sure that there's a name and a type. Without that, we can't move on. So please make sure to select an item name, and item type. They cannot be left blank. Also, if G7 is a data item and G9 equals value, what do I mean by that? If G7 equals data item and G9 equals empty, we can't have that also. If G9 equals empty, then please make sure to select the data value. We need to have a data value here, right? We can't have anything that's left blank here. So moving on, then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that, what if it's a picture? We also want to make sure that the picture also has a file. If we try to update that item, it's going to let us know, hey, we need to make sure to browse for a picture. We need to have a picture file path here. That's really important before moving on. So we have that here. So we need to make sure that, of course, G9 needs to have, we're going to run the macro add item picture in case it is empty. If G7 is a picture, I want to make sure that this particular file path is correct. So we can do that through here. If the directory of G9 equals empty, then the file path is incorrect. Please browse for pictures. So in case there's an incorrect file path, that'll let them know. Assuming that we've gone that far, everything is correct. What I want to do now is determine, remember, we're using the same macro whether it is a new item or an existing item. So I need to differentiate and know whether it is a new item. And we're going to use B7 for that. Remember, B7 is our selected row. So B7, if I click new item, B7 is going to be blank. There's no row that's selected. So B7 is going to tell us whether it's a new item like this blank or an existing item, B7. So if B7 equals empty, then it's a new item. The first thing what I want to do is I want to get the item row. I want to know where to place it. So we're going to use the first available row here, in this case 20, where we're going to place that information. I'm going to place all that information right here, and we're also going to place it in a few other places. So the first thing I want to do is get that If it's not empty, the item row is going to be located in B7. So we need to set the item row whether it is new or an existing here. I also want to set the shape name. The shape name is always going to be start with item, and then it's going to be the item row. That's going to set the name of this shape. That's this here, the name of that shape. Regardless of the type of shape, we're going to give it that name based on the row, based on the number. Moving on, let's take a look. Range B and the item row value equals B6. That's the table column. Table column. Very, very important. We need to know the table column, right? What is the table column? If you take a look at this B6, I need to know, let's say it is a specific data item. What column is associated with? This is column 1 or column 2. I need to know what column. So notice we need to get the column. So how are we going to get the column based on this? So if it's data, we need to get the column row. In case if it's not, it'll be blank. If there's an error, for example, it'll be blank. So that's fine too. Blank is okay, but I want to take that table column. I want to put it here. I want to know what column. So if error, we're going to match based on G9 the customer headers. That's going to get us the column that we have. We know what column. Why do we need the column? Why is it important? Because the column is going to tell us what data. If it's column 3, I need to know to put in office. If it's column 2, I need to put a name. So we need to know that column. Very, very important. All right, so moving on, what else do we need here? So let's continue on with the code. In C, what I want to put the picture path or the data field, basically whatever is in G9, whatever's in G9 here, I want to take that, I want to put it in C. I'm going to store that there. That's going to take that information there. So now that we have that, I also want the item name in D and I want the item type in E. Everything is good there. So we've got that information. So that's going to store the information. Now what we need to do is determine if the shape exists. Why would the shape exist? The shape will exist if it's an existing item. All right, if it's existing already. So if it does exist, what I want to do is I want to see if it exists. So on error, resume next, set the item shape name. If it doesn't exist, this will be an error, but we're trapping the error between on error, resume next, and on error go to 0. So now we've set that up. So let's get up with this. If G7 value equals text block, if it's a text block, if B7 equals empty or item shape is nothing, remember we tested it up here, then it's a new item or it's been deleted, right? So I want to just check to see if it exists or not, because I don't want to duplicate this shape and create a new one if it exists already. I only want to duplicate this particular shape and create it if it doesn't exist. So we create a new item. We know that it doesn't exist, so we do need to create it. So those are the two checks. B7 is empty, meaning there's no row associated here. If we select it, there's a row, or the shape doesn't exist. We've run the test here inside the code here, we've run the test right here. So item shape is nothing, then it's a new item or it's been deleted. So then we need to create it. So we take our sample shape and we click duplicate name, and then we get this shape name. So dot shapes, sample shape, duplicate dot name, shape name. Great. So now what we have is with the shape name, I want to set a left position. I want to set it based on I5. I5 is our starting point. So I'm going to base the left position and the top position based on I5. I also want to just give it a width. What kind of width do I want? Sheet 2 based on I5 width. So I want to just give it a basically width of whatever is in I5. That gives us a default width of the length of this column. So it's going to give us a nice wide width. In case we need that, that'll be automatically, in case it's a text, give us a nice big width. So it could be the width based on the width of the column. Also, what about the text? What kind of text do I want in there? The text inside that shape is text frame dot text string text equals sheet 2 F10 text string. That's going to give us our text string. So it's going to be based on whatever's in F10. F10 is here, right? So if I have a text block, I want to take whatever user has put in here and I want to give it the value in here, this text value. This is called text frame text dot equals the text. So that way we can do through here is going to give us that text string inside the shape. Then I want to assign a macro. Why do I want to assign a macro to this? Because when I select on it, I want something to happen. When I select on any shape, I want something to happen. What do I want to happen? I want to load this item. I want to load this information, the text item, the item name, and the non-disclosure. I want to load all that information here. So how do I do that? Right here, just by selecting it. So I want to give it a specific macro. What is that macro? That macro is called item select. That's going to assign the macro. It allows the user to perform some action when they select the item. Else, it's an existing. If it's new, right? If it's new, then we do all of this, right? We only do all of this if it's a new item. Otherwise, it is an existing item. We're only updating the text. If it's an existing item, all I want to do is update the text, right? So let's just say we don't want to put the dash in here. We want to update this. I'm going to take this, and let's just say I want to put a space in between here, and I click update. All I want to do, I don't want to create the shape. I don't want to size or position. Everything I want to change, only want to update the text here. That's all I want to do. If I want to change it back. So for existing items, all I want to do is going to update the text. That's it. Keeping everything else the same, size and position. So now that we have that, so we understand that we're only updating the text for existing items. For new items, we're doing all of this. Okay, next up, what I want to do is I want to create and add a picture. What if it's a picture? If it's a picture, I want to do something, right? So we click new item. We want a picture here. I did it before. Let's change it to picture here. And we want to browse for a picture. So we have a picture here. Click OK. And then let's just say picture, give it a name here. And then I want to click add an item. If it's a picture, I want to create that item, create that picture and put it in here. That's how we're going to do that. So that's how I want to create the picture and set it up and then position it. So if it's a picture, I want to do something. I want to look in this file path, insert a picture based on that file path, and then size it and position it accordingly. So just that's how we do it. If G7 equals picture and B7 equals empty, meaning it's a new picture, if it's new, then I want to set the picture path based on whatever's in G9. I want to insert a picture based on dot pictures, insert picture path name equals shape name. That's going to be it. Then with the shape name, we're going to position it based on the left of I5, based on the top position. And then again, we're going to give it, assign it the same exact macro, because when I select on that picture, I want the information to load in here. If I select something else or select on that picture, I want that macro to load up. This is going to be a multi-part training, so you don't have to, because it's a lot of information. So of course we're going to run this. Let's see, continuing on, we'll finish it off after about an hour or so, and then we'll continue next week. Visible, we want to make sure that that picture is visible. Assign the macro, then make sure that the picture is visible. Okay, moving on. What if it's a data item? Remember, we focused on if it's a picture here. Now we're focused on the data item. Then if it's a data item or it's a global variable, data item or global variable. In that case, we want to do a few different things. What do we want to do? In this case, I want to check to make sure B7 equals empty, then go to existing item. I want to differentiate. I need to know, again, is it a new item or is it existing? If a new item, B7 is going to be empty. If it's an existing item, let's say data item, B7 is going to have a value. So I need to differentiate once again. If it is a new item, if it's a new item, go to existing item. Basically, I want to skip all of this and go down here. But if it's a new item, I want to do this. The first thing I want to do is duplicate that sample shape, take that sample shape, duplicate it, and give it that same name. So now we're giving it a name. We're going to give it the same left position and top position. And then we're going to set a width. And then, of course, we're going to assign it the same macro. In this case, what I want to do is I want to give it a formula. Why? Because it's a data item. Well, what kind of formula do I want? Let's take in a data item. Well, formula, I want to be able to the same formula as I have. Look at this. This is a data item right here. I want to give it a specific formula, not this. I'm going to move this to the back. This one here is a formula. I want to give it a formula of K12. Why K12? Because in column K is where our information is going to be loaded. This is column K. This is going to help us. All we need to do is change the row to load the information in. Notice how we change the customer row. That's it. If I make it 0, it's going to load some defaults. Notice we have some default names. It's going to, now we says address, name. So we've cleared it out. So now we can show address. It shows the names. But if I enter some data row for the database customer row, what is 3? Well, that's going to be row 3 here. Right? It's going to show that information here. Row 4, row 5. So that's how we handle that. Let's take a look back inside the designer here. So this is going to be show our data. So I want to show that. I want to link basically anything that's associated with data. I want to link it to here because I've got a formula in here, which I'm going to show you a little bit. Probably next week we're going to get to this. I'm going to show you all the formulas in the data. So we're going to go over this. Of course, you can download this and check it out yourself. So continuing on, let's close that. We don't need that anymore. Continuing on, so now we have drawing objects. We want to assign a formula. Anything that's based on either global variable or data item, we're going to give it that formula based on K and the item row. Otherwise, it's an existing item. We don't need to create it. We don't need to assign a formula because it's an existing item, but we do need to make some updates. If it's a global variable, I want to set the format, right? Global variables have a specific format, right? If I take a look at this is a global format based on, this is a global variable. It's based on the current date. I want to give it a format. What format do I want to give it? I want to give it this format right here, whatever format's been set here. So how do we know what format? The first thing what I'm going to do is I need to determine the row. I want to know the format, but I want to assign that format based on whatever format is in this cell. Remember, we went over the format, so how do we do that? Well, inside that, we can just we determine the row. So what I want to do is I want to set the global range. This has been defined as a range up here. If we look all the way up here, we see that global range as a range. So we set that range here. Once we have that range, we can then work with it. Let's find it where we were. So now global range sheet 2, what I want to do is I want to find that row. So we're going to use find. We're setting it based on the named range, global find, the name. We're going to look for it in sheet 2, C in the item row. That is what we're looking for. What am I looking for? I'm looking for whatever's in sheet 2, F, and I'm looking for current date right here. I'm looking for this current date. I'm looking for inside here. Once it's found, I want to determine the row, in this case, row 8. Once I know the row, I can then take whatever format is in N. In this case, if we go into date, we see it's a date format. So we manage the forms. We see that it's the date format. Is this date form the same format that I want to apply to the text string? So we're going to look for it. I'm looking for that value. If it's found, if not global range is nothing, that means it's found. We found it. Then what I want to do is I want to assign the number format to the linked cell. What is that linked cell? K. Let's take a look at that. In the designer, K, I want to take that number format. I want to assign it right to here. Whatever it is, K16, I want to give it the format, or K18, I want to assign that format to this cell, because if I know that format is linked to this cell, it will automatically format accordingly that specific shape. It'll format based on the cell it's linked to. If K18 is linked to this, if I change the format, let's go back in here. If I change that format here, it's going to automatically change. So if I go into home and I change that date format to a long date format, it's automatically going to change the format here, right? So all I need to do is simply change the format here, and it's automatically going to change the format within our specific field. So our text shape here. So all I want to do is do that. So sheet 2 K and the number format of that cell is equal to sheet 2 N, right? N's our column, the row that it's been found in, and the number format. So basically all we're doing is taking whatever format's here and placing it whatever format's here. So we're just changing the format here based on whatever the found format is here, and that's really easy. So if I change it to this weekday, we're going to do that. So for example, if I take this current and I change it to, let's say, this weekday, and I update that item, it's going to automatically update it to Sunday. See how it changes that Sunday? It took the format, took this format, and it placed it right here. Now notice it's formatted on Sunday. Of course, that doesn't make much sense, but you get the idea. So we can do that and just click update the item. So when we update, it's automatically going to take that format. So that's all we do in the number format and width. All right, the next thing I want to do is C3 equals true. I want to set the template change to true. If I've made templates and I select on another template, I want to know that we've made changes to that. All right, fantastic. All right, listen, we've got a ton more to cover. We're not going to be able to squeeze it all in this week. I've got so much more. This is an incredible comprehensive training. So we're going to split it up next week. This is going to be part 1. Next week, we're going to do part 2. I've got so much more to show you. Please, I love doing these multi-parts, but you got to watch part 2, right? Sometimes the views drop off. So I really appreciated you. Mark it on your calendar. I'm going to remind you. I'm going to send you an email, of course, making sure you catch part 2. I'm going to show you everything and how to do this, walk you step by step. Right? Downloading these applications is not enough. Let me walk you step by step. Please like, share, and don't forget, we've got a brand new 175 workbook zip file that is on sale for just $66. If you want to help support us, that's a great way to do it. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you part 2 next week for the document and contract designer part 2. All right, thanks so much. Have a great week.